I woke up to silence that felt wrong, too heavy, too still. My house was never this quiet in the morning. But then, a sound, muffled sobbing. At first I thought it was my imagination. But then came the creak of the hallway floorboards, my grandson's small footsteps. I froze. My heart pounded against my ribs like an urgent warning. The door to my bedroom burst open. There he was, eyes red, shoulders shaking. He was clutching his blanket like it could protect him. "Grandma," his voice cracked. "Mom!" "Sold your room," I blinked. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled uncontrollably. "My room." "Sold? How?" "My room. The place I had lived in for 30 years. The room where every corner held a memory, every wall whispered a lifetime. What?" I stammered. My voice was brittle, almost lost under the weight of disbelief. He burst into tears again, covering his face with his hands. "I heard her talking on the phone. She said she was going to sell it. She said she didn't need it anymore." I stepped closer, gripping his shoulders. "Calm down, sweetheart. Breathe. Tell me exactly what happened." Through hiccups and sobs, he repeated, "She was in the kitchen, on the phone, talking to someone. She said it was final, and that the room was already sold." His voice broke again. "Grandma, what's happening?" My mind spun. My daughter, my own child, selling my room without telling me? My heart squeezed painfully. It wasn't just about the space. It was about my home, my sanctuary. That room held years of photographs, letters, keepsakes. My very life. I stumbled to my phone and called her immediately. The line rang, each tone stretching seconds into eternities. Then her voice, calm but guarded, answered. "Mom, I thought you knew." "Knew? Knew what? That you sold my room?" My voice was sharp, trembling. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't think it would upset you this much." "You didn't think? My room, my home, you didn't think to even tell me?" My voice cracked. "How could you?" There was silence on the other end. Then she said softly, "We needed the money. You've been here for years without paying rent." I thought this was the right choice. I felt my chest tighten, my hands dropping to my sides. I couldn't breathe. "This isn't just about money. It's my home, my memories." "I know, Mom," she said quietly, "but I'm trying to keep the family afloat. Please understand." Her words hit me like a cold wave. I wanted to scream, to cry, to knock down every wall in this house. But instead, I whispered, "No, I don't understand." And I hung up. I sank into the armchair in my living room, my head in my hands. My grandson sat beside me, still sobbing softly. Outside the window, the autumn wind rustled dead leaves, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. I remembered the first day I moved into this house. The creak of the front door, the smell of fresh paint, my grandmother's old clock ticking in the corner. Every inch of this place carried a story. My late husband's laughter in the kitchen, birthdays celebrated with too much cake and too much noise, quiet nights by the fireplace. That room, my room, was my last sanctuary. The thought that it was gone, sold without my consent, felt like someone had pulled the ground from beneath me. I stood abruptly, pacing. Then I heard it again, voices, muffled, coming from outside my bedroom door. Low tones, urgent. I pressed my ear against the door. "Already taken care of," a voice said. "She can't know yet," another replied. My heart stopped. I pulled back from the door. My mind raced. Who were they talking about? What were they hiding from me? I walked to the window and peeked through the curtains. But all I could see was the flicker of movement, shadows shifting outside. I couldn't tell who it was. Whoever they were, they didn't want me to hear them. My breath hitched. My grandson glanced up at me, still trembling. "Grandma, what's going on?" I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to sound steady. "I don't know yet, but I promise you, I'm going to find out." Somewhere deep inside, I felt something stir, a determination I hadn't felt in years. Something told me this was more than just a sale. This was the beginning of a much darker story, and I needed to uncover the truth. Before that day, before my world cracked open with my grandson's words, life was quiet, gentle, predictable. I was Evelyn, 74 years old, a retired schoolteacher, and someone who found comfort in the smallest things. My mornings began with the same ritual, brewing a pot of jasmine tea, sitting by the window, and watching the sun stretch across my garden. the scent of jasmine was my favorite. It curled through the air like a soft memory, reminding me of summers long ago. My garden was my refuge. Roses, lavender, and marigolds flourished under my careful tending. Every morning, I'd step out barefoot, feeling the cool grass beneath me, breathing in the scent of flowers and soil. That moment, with the sun on my face and a steaming cup of tea in hand, was mine alone. Most days, I was alone. My husband had passed 10 years ago, and my friends had drifted away with time. There was comfort in solitude, but there was also loneliness. My daughter lived 2 towns over, busy with her own life, her own worries. My connection to the world came mostly through family visits, and especially through my grandson, Michael. My little boy with the bright eyes, the restless hands, and a laugh that could still crack through my hardest days. Every Thursday, he would come after school. The sound of his footsteps on my creaking floorboards was like music to me. Sometimes he'd burst in before I even heard him knock. "Grandma," he'd yell. "Guess what happened today?" And without waiting for me to answer, he'd pour into stories about school, about friends, about things only he noticed. I'd sit in my favorite chair, the one worn soft with years of use, cup of tea in hand, and listen. There was something about his presence that felt like a shield against the world's harshness. We'd sit in the kitchen, laughing over sandwiches I made, talking about silly things. One afternoon, he looked up at me with those serious eyes and said, "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to have a garden like yours." "And a chair just like yours," I smiled softly. "It's yours one day, sweetheart." "But only if you promise to tend it," he giggled. "Deal." Those moments, small, fleeting, were treasures to me. They made the silence of my house bearable. They gave my life rhythm. But there were times my daughter's words hinted at storms I didn't yet see. At family dinners, she'd drop remarks like, "Things are going to change soon, Mom," or, "We need to talk about the future." I'd nod politely, assuming it was about practical matters, bills, repairs, nothing to worry about. But her eyes never lingered long enough to explain, and I never pressed her. Perhaps I was too trusting. Perhaps I didn't want to hear what she was hiding. One evening, she called while I was in my garden pruning roses. Her voice sounded different, quieter, almost tense. "Mom, I just wanted to let you know, we might need to make some adjustments around the house. Nothing serious." I set my secateurs down, wiping dirt from my hands. "Adjustments? Like what?" "It's hard to explain over the phone." Her tone was careful. "I'll tell you when I see you." I didn't think much of it then. I was too used to her vague reassurances. I believed we had time. I believed my home, my life, was safe, until the day my grandson's voice shattered that illusion. After his words, "Mom sold your room," the stillness of my home transformed into something unfamiliar. The creak of my floorboards no longer felt comforting. The scent of jasmine seemed faint, as though dulled by something unseen. My chair, once warm and inviting, now felt like a relic of a past life. I replayed my daughter's vague warnings in my head. Those adjustments, that change, the casual way she spoke as if it wasn't urgent. Now they made a kind of sense, but not the sense I wanted. This wasn't a change to make life easier. This was something else, something deliberate. I thought about Michael. He didn't understand what he had told me yet. He was too young to process it, but I could see the fear in his eyes when he looked at me after speaking those words. I wanted to hold him close, to shield him from this. "Betrayal, Grandma?" he whispered, tugging at my sleeve. I looked down at him, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Let's go sit, sweetheart." We moved to the kitchen. I made him tea the way I always did, though my hands trembled. I kept glancing toward my bedroom door. It felt like it was calling to me, a silent reminder that something precious was gone. For a long moment, we sat in silence. Michael sipped his tea quietly, staring at the steam rising in curls. I stared at him, wondering how much he understood, how much I even understood. The house around us, once a place of warmth and routine, now felt heavier. Shadows seemed to linger in corners where they hadn't before. The ticking of the clock on the wall was too loud, like it was counting down to something, and I knew, without knowing exactly why, that nothing would ever be the same again. That sense of safety I had clung to, built over decades of quiet mornings, The laughter of my grandson, the smell of my garden, was gone. My world had shifted, and somewhere inside me, a spark had ignited. I needed answers. Before I could act, though, there was another sound. Outside my bedroom door, soft voices hushed. I froze again. "Don't let her find out. She can't know yet." The words were muffled, but clear enough to send a shiver down my spine. I looked at Michael. His eyes were wide. "Grandma, what's happening?" I took a deep breath. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. "I don't know yet, but I promise we'll find out together." Something had changed. That peace I had lived with was gone. My life before betrayal, simple, comforting, secure, was now just a memory, and I was standing at the edge of a storm I couldn't ignore. In the days that followed Michael's words, the air in my home changed. It wasn't the loud kind of change that smashes windows or sends voices into shouting matches. No, it was quieter, subtler, like a shadow creeping along the floor without me noticing at first. The first sign was the sign. I woke one morning to the sound of distant voices outside my window. Squinting through the curtains, I saw a small group of people standing in my front yard. They were placing a real estate sign in the ground. Bright red letters spelled "For Sale." My chest tightened. I rushed outside, clutching my robe. "What is this?" I called, my voice trembling. A man in a crisp suit looked up at me. "We were told the sale was approved." "Approved? By whom?" I demanded. The man shifted uncomfortably. "By your daughter, Mrs.?" "My name is Evelyn. And no one told me anything." He mumbled something about paperwork and left quickly. I stood there, staring at the sign, my heart pounding. Michael appeared behind me, his small face pale. "Grandma, did you know?" he asked softly. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "I don't know." That was the first time I began to notice her, my daughter, avoiding me. Before, she would call every day, check on me, drop by when she could. Now she became distant. My calls went unanswered, messages left unreturned. When I asked her about the sign, her replies were brief and careful. "Mom, it's nothing really. Don't worry about it," she said one afternoon over the phone. But her voice wasn't convincing. There was tension there, something she was hiding. "Nothing," I pressed. "They put a "For Sale" sign in my yard without telling me." "That's not nothing. What's going on?" "I promise, it's fine," she said quickly, then added, I want to handle this for you." "Handle it how?" My voice cracked, betraying my confusion. She sighed softly. "It's for your own good, Mom. You'll understand soon." Her words made something curl tight in my chest. For my own good? What did she mean? And why couldn't she look me in the eye when she said it? The next few weeks were a blur of silence and absence. I started noticing more little betrayals. My calls to her often went to voicemail. Even my relatives, who used to stop by on weekends, no longer visited. It was as if someone, or something, was quietly closing the doors around me. One evening, Michael and I sat in the living room, the air thick with quiet. I watched him play with his toy cars, his brow furrowed like he was deep in thought. "Grandma?" he asked suddenly, looking up at me. "Why does Aunt Claire never come here anymore?" My throat tightened. Aunt Claire, my sister-in-law, had always been a fixture in my life. Now she had stopped visiting altogether. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said softly, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Maybe she's busy." But it wasn't just Aunt Claire. Other familiar faces faded. My phone rang less. Letters stopped arriving. The garden felt quieter. Even the creaking of the floorboards seemed diminished, as though the house itself had lost some of its warmth. I began keeping a small notebook by my chair. I wrote down every strange thing, the sign, the missed calls, the silence. It became my way of making sense of the creeping confusion. Every entry ended with the same question: why won't she tell me? One afternoon, I caught my daughter in person. She came over unexpectedly. I thought I might finally get answers. Instead, the conversation twisted into something I wasn't prepared for. "Mom, we need to talk," she said as soon as I opened the door. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "Yes, about the sign," I said sharply. "About what's going on?" She shook her head gently. "It's not the right time yet. But I promise. I'm doing this for you." "For me?" I repeated, disbelief cutting through me. "You've sold my home. You didn't even tell me. How is that for me?" She avoided my eyes. It's complicated. You'll understand soon. Understand. My voice rose despite myself. Do you know what this means to me? This house. It's my life. My memories. You can't just decide something like this without telling me. Her expression softened for a moment, then hardened again. Mom, I'm trying to protect you. Her words struck me like a blow. Protect me? From what? From whom? I felt my breath catch, the weight of betrayal pressing down harder. She left before I could ask more. I stood in the doorway long after she'd gone, staring down the empty street. The for sale sign still stood in my yard, a silent, accusing presence. That night, I lay in bed listening to the silence of the house. Every creak of the floor felt louder, every shadow more menacing. Michael was asleep beside me, his breath even and soft. I stared at the ceiling, my mind a tangle of fear and confusion. Was this just about selling a house? Or had I been stripped of something far deeper, my home, my voice, my place in the world? A sense of isolation grew inside me, creeping in like ivy over stone. I began to dread picking up the phone. Every unanswered call felt like another lock closing on my world. And I knew, somewhere deep inside, that I was standing at the edge of something far worse than I had imagined. When my daughter said it was for my own good, it didn't soothe me. It unsettled me, and I realized then that her secrecy was not protection. It was betrayal. Something dark was unfolding, and I had no idea how far it would go. That night, sleep would not come. The house felt heavier somehow, as if every shadow was watching me. I lay in bed listening to the quiet hum of the night, until a sound made me freeze. Soft voices, whispered words. They weren't coming from outside the house. They were coming from inside. My daughter's voice, low, urgent, hushed. I slipped from bed, careful not to wake Michael. The creak of the floorboard under my foot felt deafening. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I crept toward the hallway outside my bedroom. Her voice grew clearer. Yes, everything's settled. The final deal is ready. The contract just needs to be signed. Yes, I'll take care of the room. The buyer wants it exactly as discussed. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, my own daughter, speaking about my room as if it belonged to someone else. As if I didn't exist in it anymore. The words final deal and contract hit me like blows. I leaned against the wall, gripping it for balance. My hands shook. The world felt suddenly unreal. I stayed there for what felt like an eternity. Her voice trailed away. Footsteps, the sound of her bedroom door closing softly. Then silence. I slipped back to my bed, but sleep fled from me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the words replaying in my mind. Final deal, contract, room. The next morning, the house felt colder. Michael noticed it too. He barely spoke, glancing at me nervously over his cereal. Later, I confronted her. I could no longer pretend. I found her in the kitchen making coffee. The smell of it normally comforted me, but that morning it only felt sharp and bitter. Claire, I said softly, my voice trembling. We need to talk. She didn't look up. I'm busy, Mom. Can we not do this now? No, now. My voice hardened. I overheard you last night. You were talking about a deal, a contract, my room. What is going on? Her hand stilled around the coffee mug. She looked at me finally, her expression unreadable. It's complicated, she said quietly. No, it's not complicated. It's my home, my life, my room. You've been selling it behind my back. She shook her head slowly. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. I stepped closer, my voice breaking. Why would you do this without telling me? Without even asking me? She put her mug down with a sharp clink. I told you, Mom. It's for your own good. The words hit me harder than I expected. For my own good? I repeated, disbelief laced in every syllable. You made decisions about my life without telling me, without even giving me a chance. How is that for my own good? Her eyes flickered away. You wouldn't understand. Not yet. I reached out, my voice desperate. Try me, please. I need to understand. But she stepped back. I can't explain right now. It's complicated. She turned abruptly and walked away. The slam of the kitchen door echoed through the house. I stood there stunned. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she told me the truth. But instead, I felt a strange stillness take over me, a mixture of shock and a growing sense of determination. From somewhere behind me, I heard soft crying. I turned. Michael was standing there, his small hands pressed over his mouth, tears glistening in his eyes. "Grandma," he whispered, "why is Aunt Claire so angry with you?" My heart ached. I knelt beside him, brushing his hair away from his face. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know," he sniffled and ran to his room. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the closed door. I could still hear the echo of my daughter's footsteps fading down the hallway. The betrayal was no longer a whisper. It had become a roar in my chest. The walls of my home seemed to close in around me. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow on the wall felt heavier now. I realized then that this wasn't just about a house. It was about trust. It was about family. And that trust had been shattered. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling. I pulled my small notebook toward me and wrote in large letters, "I will find out the truth." A sense of resolve settled over me. My confusion was turning into determination. Whatever Claire was hiding, I was going to uncover it, even if it tore the family apart, because the night before I had heard something that I could never forget. Something that was no longer just an unsettling suspicion. It was now a certainty. My home, my life, was being taken from me. And I was determined to fight for it. I didn't sleep that night either. My mind was a storm, a chaotic mix of disbelief, grief, and anger. I kept replaying the conversation I had overheard, every word sharp in my memory. Final deal, contract, my room. It felt like a knife twisting deeper every time I thought about it. I sat at the kitchen table before dawn, my tea gone cold, my hands wrapped around the mug. I kept thinking of the years I had trusted Claire, trusted her to respect me, to value our family. How could I have been so blind? How could I have not noticed? It wasn't just the deal. It was everything that had been happening quietly over the past months. The unanswered calls, the way she avoided eye contact, the excuses when I asked about small things, the absence of family at the house. All of it had been signs, and I had ignored them. The truth hit me like a thunderclap. I had been manipulated. Betrayal wasn't coming from some stranger. It was coming from the person I trusted most in this house. I needed answers. Michael woke up late that morning and found me still sitting there, staring into nothing. He tugged at my sleeve gently. "Grandma, what's wrong?" I looked at him and forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetheart, just thinking." He wasn't convinced. "You're upset. Is it because of Aunt Claire?" I froze, my heart sank. How much did he know? He was only 8, but kids hear things. And they remember. "Yes, baby," I said softly. "I heard something last night. Something I don't understand." His little face crumpled. "Is Aunt Claire going to take your room?" I blinked back tears. "I don't know, love. But I need to find out." He nodded silently and ran to his room. I heard him whisper to himself as he closed the door. "Be careful, Grandma." The words stayed with me. They became my resolve. That day, I began quietly gathering information. I didn't confront Claire again, not yet. I needed facts, not just feelings. I started with the paperwork. The house files, old letters, anything that might shed light on what Claire was doing. I stayed up late, leafing through stacks of documents, comparing dates and signatures. Every signature that wasn't mine felt like another betrayal etched into paper. The neighbors became my next source of information. I approached Mrs. Patel first, a kindly woman who lived 2 houses down. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said softly, leaning over the gate. "But have you noticed anything unusual? People coming and going at odd hours?" She hesitated. "Well, yes. There's been some moving trucks lately. And Claire, she's been talking to a man, often, in hushed voices. That sent a chill down my spine." "Do you know who he is?" Mrs. Patel shook her head. "I don't know, dear. But she's been acting strangely, not like herself." I thanked her quietly and walked home, every step heavier than the last. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but the picture they formed was ugly. Back inside, I sat in my room, tracing my fingers over the old wooden frame of my bed. This was my sanctuary, my memories, and someone was erasing it without my permission. Later, Michael came to sit beside me. "Grandma, are you going to fight her?" I looked at him, my eyes burning. "Yes, sweetheart, I have to. I can't let this happen, not without a fight." He hugged me tightly, and I felt both strength and fear all at once. I thought of trust. How I had given it freely. How I had never imagined it could be used as a weapon. Betrayal from those closest to you is the sharpest. Claire had weaponized my trust. She had made me blind while she dismantled what was mine. It was more than just my room. It was my life, my dignity, my home. That night, I sat quietly, staring at the darkened walls. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of the wind outside. But inside me, a storm was growing. I would not give up without a fight. Not now, not ever. I reached for my notebook again and wrote, "I will resist. I will uncover the truth, no matter what it takes." Somewhere in the silence, I felt the weight of the coming battle. I didn't yet know how I would fight it, but I knew this. I would not surrender my home. The betrayal had awakened something in me. A resolve, a fire. Claire thought she could take my room without me noticing. But she was wrong, and soon she would find out. The days that followed were quiet but heavy. I moved through my house like someone carrying a secret too dangerous to speak. Every glance at Claire felt charged, like an unspoken battle was unfolding between us. I began gathering evidence in small, careful ways. No dramatic confrontations yet, no shouting, just quiet collection. One afternoon, I found myself leaning against the fence near Mrs. Patel's yard. I had stopped by under the guise of borrowing sugar. "You're home late again," she said softly, handing me the container. "I have been busy," I murmured, glancing toward Claire's side of the street. Mrs. Patel hesitated, her eyes narrowing. "People talk, Evelyn." I've noticed more trucks, more whispers. Even a man visiting late. That gave me something. A lead. I started keeping notes, a small notebook hidden in my bedside drawer. I photographed things. The strange real estate sign Claire hadn't told me about. Paperwork lying on the kitchen counter. Envelopes marked with names I didn't recognize. I never made a sound while doing it. Every snap of my phone felt like another brick in my wall of resistance. I confronted Claire, but softly, cautiously, trying not to reveal how much I suspected. That evening, in the kitchen. "Claire, can I ask you something?" I began. "What is it?" She replied, without looking up from her phone. "That sign outside? What's going on with it?" She sighed, dropping her phone on the counter. "It's just a listing. Don't worry about it. I can't help but notice you've been distant lately," I said gently. "And there are things you're not telling me." Claire's eyes sharpened. "Mom," I said, "it's nothing. Stop making it into something it's not." There was a finality in her tone that stung. I backed away without pressing further. But inside my mind was spinning. I could feel the shift. Claire was noticing my quiet investigations. My suspicion wasn't hidden anymore. A week later, I found another piece of the puzzle. An old letter wedged behind a stack of bills. It was from a man I didn't recognize, addressed to Claire. The words were businesslike, discussing conditions and agreement, and, in a way that made my stomach twist, handover date. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my notebook. That night, I sat alone in my dim bedroom, the letter open beside me. Michael came in quietly, his small face peeking into the room. "Grandma, are you going to be okay?" I smiled faintly, brushing his hair aside. "I will be, sweetheart. I just have a lot to think about," he frowned. "You've been thinking a lot lately?" I nodded. "Yes, but thinking isn't enough. I need answers." The tension between Claire and me was thick now. She avoided me in the hallways, her tone clipped when we spoke. I could feel her watching me too, aware that I was watching her. It was like we were two predators circling, each waiting for the other to make the first move. One afternoon, I stopped at the mailbox and found an envelope without a return address. Inside was a single folded piece of paper. Check the attic. Truth hides where memories sleep. My hands shook. I stood there staring at that message for what felt like hours. It was confirmation of what I feared. Someone else knew. Someone wanted me to find the truth. But who? And why? That night, I didn't sleep again. The attic loomed in my mind like a locked room filled with secrets. I could almost feel the dust settling there over years of silence. I realized then that I had crossed an invisible line. I was no longer just a woman suspicious of her own daughter. I had become an investigator, quietly pulling at threads that Claire had worked so hard to conceal. There was fear, yes, a deep, gnawing fear of what I might discover. But underneath it all there was resolve, a stubborn, growing determination not to let this betrayal stand unchallenged. The next morning, I told myself, I would not let this end quietly. I would not let my home be stolen from me. Not without a fight, and I knew Claire would notice soon enough, because by now, she already did. It started subtly at first. Claire began locking her door more often. Not with the usual latch. No, she started using a key she kept hidden somewhere. It was as if she wanted to build walls between us, not just physically, but emotionally. I noticed first when I went to retrieve my notebook, the one with the photos and letters I'd been collecting. I knocked gently. No answer. Claire? I called. Nothing. Later that evening, I tried again. Claire, we need to talk. The key rattled. The door stayed shut. From then on, I realized the hostility wasn't just subtle, it was deliberate. The next morning, a thick envelope waited for me on the kitchen table. My name printed neatly on the front. Inside were documents, paperwork with my signature forged, claiming I had given consent for Claire to handle the room however she pleased. There was even a letter from a lawyer. The tone was cold, official. You are hereby notified that your occupancy of the premises is terminated effective immediately. Vacate the room without delay. My hands trembled as I read it. My breath caught. My own daughter had turned legal and used forged papers to do it. That night, I confronted her. Claire, what is this? I held the letter out. My voice cracked, but I tried to keep calm. She didn't flinch. She looked me straight in the eye. It's what's best, Mom. You've been here too long. That room isn't yours anymore. Best for who? I asked sharply. You? Because it doesn't feel like best for me? Claire's lips curled into a bitter smile. You've been making things difficult. Nosy, suspicious, I can't have this dragging on. You've been gaslighting me. You forged my signature, I said, voice breaking. Gaslighting? That's ridiculous. Her tone was sharp now. You've been imagining things. You're making accusations without proof. Honestly, I'm disappointed. I have proof, I hissed, gripping my notebook tighter. I have pictures, letters, witnesses. She leaned closer. Her voice lowered, threatening. Careful, Mom. You don't want to make this worse for yourself. My chest tightened. She was smiling, but it wasn't the warm smile I remembered from my own child. This was a weapon. From that moment, things changed. Claire began barring me from entering the house freely. Even family members, cousins I once trusted, friends I had leaned on, began to avoid me. Whispers followed me. Invitations stopped. At family gatherings, I became a ghost. One afternoon, I found myself sitting alone at the kitchen table. Michael came in quietly, eyes wary. Grandma, why won't anyone talk to me? He asked softly. I took his small hands in mine, my voice breaking. Sometimes, sweetheart, people choose sides. But you don't have to. You can see the truth for yourself. He nodded, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. Claire escalated further. She began posting notices on the house door, declaring my occupancy unlawful. The words cut deep. This room is private property. No trespassing. I tried asking her in the hallway why she was doing this. Mom, just leave it, she said coldly. It's not yours to question. One evening, I returned from visiting Mrs. Patel to find a man in a dark suit waiting outside my door. He handed me another letter, this one more formal, an official eviction notice. The language was curt, without empathy. I read it under the weak kitchen light, every word a dagger to my heart. I went straight to Claire. Why are you doing this to me? I demanded. She looked at me as if I were a stranger. I'm protecting my future, and that room isn't part of it. You've been lying. Manipulating. You've turned this house into a battlefield. Her face hardened. And you've turned yourself into a liability. The argument drew Michael in. I heard him crying softly upstairs. My heart ached. I went to him, but Claire blocked my way. Stay out of this, she snapped. That night, I lay awake in my car parked across the street. I couldn't face staying in the house where I once felt safe. My mind replayed every conversation, every accusation, every locked door. The betrayal was suffocating. I felt isolated. Even my own relatives stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. It was as if Claire had rewritten the story of our family and cast me as the villain. But beneath the despair, something hardened inside me. A quiet, burning resolve. They wanted me silenced. They wanted me out, but I wouldn't go quietly. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook spread before me. I traced every date, every photograph, every letter. I made a vow to myself I would not be erased, not by forged documents, not by threats, not by lies. The next day, Claire confronted me in the hallway, her voice cold. "You have until tonight to vacate the room," she said. "No exceptions." Her words rang in my ears long after she was gone. I felt the weight of it in my bones. This wasn't just about a room anymore. It was about my life, my dignity, my home. And I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't leave without a fight. The morning the court handed the decision down felt like a funeral for my home. I sat in the small wooden pew of the courtroom, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold my notebook. My name was called, the papers rustling loudly in the judge's hands. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor. The words still echo in my ears. "Temporary possession of the property is granted to the respondent, Ms. Claire." I wanted to cry out, to shout that this wasn't right, that my life wasn't theirs to take. But my voice caught in my throat. Claire's lips curved into that same cold smile she wore at home. She didn't clap or celebrate, but there was a certain satisfaction in her posture. She knew she had won. When I walked out of the courthouse, the world felt heavier. Every step toward home was weighed down by an invisible stone. The front door greeted me with silence. No one spoke. Not my relatives, not Claire, not even Michael. I tried to retreat to my room, but it wasn't my room anymore. Movers were there, packing my life into cardboard boxes. My belongings, books, clothes, my cherished notebook of memories disappeared into crates labeled with Claire's neat handwriting. I stood at the doorframe, hands pressed against the wood, unable to move. "Mom?" Michael's small voice startled me. I turned to see him standing in the hallway, clutching his blanket. His eyes were wet, trembling. "They're taking everything," I whispered. He stepped closer, wrapping his little arms around me. I could hear his heart beating fast. "Don't cry, Grandma. We won't give up. I promise." I leaned into him, my knees buckling. My tears fell freely now, mixing with the lump in my throat. "I don't know what to do, Michael," I murmured. "They've taken everything from me, even my dignity." He pressed his forehead against my chest. "We'll find a way. You taught me how to fight. I'll fight with you." His words were like a spark in the dark. I clung to that spark as I watched the last box being carried away. Through the tear haze, I saw my life being stripped apart. My photographs, my letters, my little mementos of decades gone by, all disappearing. The sound of the door shutting behind the movers was a final hammer blow. I didn't even have the strength to argue. The court's decision had taken more than just my room. It had taken something deep inside me, a sense of home, of belonging. That night, I sat in the darkened living room. My voice barely a whisper, I told Michael, "I have to figure out a way, sweetheart. I can't let this end like this." He looked at me with unwavering determination. "You won't, Grandma. I'll help you." The next morning, I was walking past the old park near the hospital where I once worked. My mind was a storm of plans and desperation. That's when I saw him, Mr. Harris, retired solicitor. He'd taught me law basics when I volunteered in the nursing training program years ago. He was sitting on a worn wooden bench, feeding pigeons. His silver hair glistened in the sun, his face calm but lined with wisdom. Something in him told me he still cared about justice. I approached hesitantly. "Mr. Harris?" His head turned slowly. His eyes softened when he recognized me. "Evelyn, it's been years. How have you been?" I swallowed hard. "I'm in trouble. My home is being taken from me. My daughter has the law on her side, or so they say." He motioned for me to sit beside him. "Tell me everything." For the first time since the court's decision, I let the dam break. I told him everything, the forged papers, the locked doors, the threats, the eviction. He listened in silence, his face unreadable. When I stopped, he looked at me with piercing eyes. "Evelyn, what you're facing is more than just a family dispute. It's a legal battle, and you'll need more than sentiment to win. But there is hope." I leaned forward, my voice trembling. "Hope? I don't have any left." He placed his hand over mine. "Don't underestimate yourself. You fought your whole life to care for others. Now it's time to fight for yourself. If you want, I can help you." His words hit me like a lifeline thrown across a stormy sea. For the first time since losing the court battle, I felt something stir inside me. Not defeat, not despair, but resolve. I didn't know how this battle would end. I only knew I wasn't finished yet. And Mr. Harris? He would be my unexpected ally. That night, as I lay in a stranger's guest room, my belongings locked away in boxes, I whispered to Michael, "We're not giving up. No matter what it takes." He squeezed my hand and whispered back, "We'll win, Grandma." The next day, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single folded note. "Meet me tomorrow. There's something you must see. H." My heart skipped a beat. This could be the break I had been waiting for, or the next trap. The envelope slipped under my door, burned in my pocket all night. I couldn't sleep. Michael lay beside me, breathing softly, unaware that the world was changing around us. By dawn, I had decided I wouldn't run. I wouldn't hide. I would fight. When the clock struck 9, I found myself standing outside a quiet cafe, heart pounding. Mr. Harris was already there, sitting at a corner table with a stack of papers and an unreadable expression. "Evelyn," he said without looking up, "I'm glad you came. This is important." I slid into the seat across from him, clutching Michael's small hand under the table. "I don't have much time, Mr. Harris. Tell me what's next." He finally looked up. "We need to approach this like a chess game. Every move must be precise. We cannot afford mistakes." I nodded. "I've already lost too much. My home, my room, my dignity. I can't lose this fight too." Michael squeezed my hand. "We won't, Grandma." Mr. Harris cleared his throat and spread the papers across the table. "These are documents I've gathered. Bank statements, property records, correspondence. All evidence of Claire's misconduct, forged documents, threats, and inconsistencies in the legal process. These could turn the case in your favor." I leaned over the papers, tracing the words with trembling fingers. This could change everything," he nodded. "But it won't be easy. Claire has lawyers. She's powerful. We need testimonies, witnesses, proof beyond doubt." I swallowed hard. "We have to. For Michael. For me." He gave me a small, rare smile. "That's the spirit. But this means risking a lot. Time, money, reputation. Are you prepared?" I looked at Michael, who gave me a determined nod. "Yes, whatever it takes." Mr. Harris looked between us, then leaned closer. "First, we approached the neighbors. Several have already spoken to me privately. Their statements will be key. They saw changes, heard arguments, noticed Claire restricting your access. Their testimonies can't be ignored." I felt my chest tighten. "And what else?" "We request a court injunction to halt further eviction proceedings while we prepare your case. That gives us breathing space. But the main blow will be the evidence of forgery. If we prove that, the entire foundation of Claire's claim collapses." I nodded slowly. "It sounds terrifying," Mr. Harris chuckled softly. "It is. But sometimes the greatest victories come from the most desperate battles. We spoke for hours. Every detail mattered. Every document, every witness, every question we might face. I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a plan. Later that evening, Michael and I sat in the quiet of the living room. He brought me tea, his little hands careful, as if handling something fragile. "Grandma," he said softly, "I'm proud of you." I felt my throat tighten. "Proud of me?" "Yes, you're not giving up. You're standing up for what's right. That makes you strong," I smiled faintly. "I wish I felt that strong." "You are," he insisted. "I know it." His words gave me a warmth I hadn't felt in days. I thought of the courtroom, the judge's words, Claire's cold smile. My heart beat faster. I wasn't going to let her win. That night, I reviewed the papers Mr. Harris had given me. I read and reread every word, every note, every record. My head buzzed with possibilities, but also with fear. What if we failed? What if the court sided with her again? But deep inside, a flame had been lit. Fear still lingered, but beneath it was something far stronger: determination. The next morning, Mr. Harris came by with a folder thick with documents. "These are witness affidavits, Evelyn. Signed statements from neighbors and former colleagues, some even willing to speak in court." I took the folder, fingers trembling. This could be my last chance. He placed a hand on mine. Not last, just the first step in your counterattack. That afternoon, we visited one neighbor who had agreed to speak. Mrs. Thornton, a retired schoolteacher, opened her door cautiously. "I heard you needed my help," she said softly. "I've been watching, and I don't agree with how Claire's treating you." "I know, Mrs. Thornton." "Thank you," I said, swallowing my pride. "It means a lot." Her eyes softened. "It's not right what they've done to you. I'll give my statement to the solicitor." One by one, more neighbors agreed. Each small victory felt like a brick added to the fortress I was building around myself. By the end of the week, I stood in front of Mr. Harris, the weight of the folder heavy in my hands. "We have enough?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Enough to take this back to court." "You'll have your day to speak, Evelyn. You'll stand in that courtroom and fight for your home, your life, your dignity." I took a deep breath, feeling the resolve inside me harden. "Then I will. I will stand, no matter what it costs." Michael peeked around the doorway, his eyes bright. "We'll win, Grandma." I smiled through my tears. "We will. I promise you." That night, I lay awake thinking of the battle ahead. I knew the road would be hard. I knew there would be more pain. But I also knew I had found something worth fighting for. For the first time in weeks, I slept with a quiet sense of purpose. Because tomorrow, the real fight begins. The courthouse smelled of polished wood, coffee, and nervous tension. The kind of tension that sits heavy in the air, pressing on your chest. I walked in with Michael, my chest tight, palms sweating. The seat I chose was near the front, so I could see everything, every reaction. Claire was already there. She didn't look at me. She barely looked human, just a mask of calm, sharp, and rehearsed. Mr. Harris met me outside the courtroom before the hearing began. He gave me a quick nod. "This is it, Evelyn. Stay steady. They'll try to break you." "I'm ready," I whispered, though my voice trembled. The courtroom filled slowly. I heard murmurs, the scrape of chairs. My heart pounded. Michael held my hand tightly. I could feel his nervous energy. When the case began, Claire's lawyer stepped up first. His voice was smooth, practiced. "This court must recognize the documents presented by my client," he said, placing a sheaf of papers on the judge's desk. "These are legal. They establish rightful control over the property in question." Claire's voice followed, calm, cold. "They are the truth. I have only ever acted in the best interest of this family." I sat back in my seat. Truth. That word felt heavy in the air. I knew it wasn't true. Mr. Harris leaned in beside me. "Watch her. They'll be pushing hard," and they did. They showed document after document, everything designed to dismantle me. My face felt hot as I listened. My hands clenched the folds of my dress. When it was my turn, I stayed quiet for a long moment. I could feel every eye in the courtroom turn toward me, some curious, some skeptical. My chest tightened. The silence was broken by the soft sound of my grandson shifting in his seat behind me. Then, "Grandma," his voice trembled. "I want to say something." I turned sharply toward him. "Michael." "Not now. I have to," he said firmly, stepping forward. The judge looked surprised. Claire's face stiffened. Mr. Harris leaned forward. "Your Honor, with your permission." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Michael stood before the court, hands shaking. I have recordings." A ripple of shock ran through the courtroom. Claire's lawyer blinked rapidly. Claire looked pale. "What recordings?" the judge asked. Michael's voice cracked. "Of Claire. Of her saying she'd take the house away from Grandma. Of her saying she forged documents. I have them here." He pulled out his phone, his little fingers trembling. The court went silent. Mr. Harris gave me a small, encouraging nod. The recordings played. Claire's voice filled the courtroom. "She can't have this property. She's too old. I've already taken steps." "It's mine," gasps echoed. I stared at Claire, stunned, betrayed. She didn't look at me. Her face hardened. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Claire, is this true?" Claire faltered. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She took a deep breath. "No, Your Honor. These are taken out of context. My mother is mistaken." The words hit me like a physical blow. Mistaken. I wanted to scream. I stood. My voice trembled at first, then grew stronger. No, I'm not mistaken. I heard her myself. I lived in this house, made this home. And she stole it from me. Claire's eyes flashed toward me. You're insane! I took a step toward her. No, I'm a mother, a grandmother, and I am fighting for my dignity. This isn't just a room. It's my life, my memories. You can't take that away. The courtroom was silent again. I could hear my own heartbeat. Michael's small hand found mine, squeezing it tightly. Claire's voice broke the silence. You have no right— No, I interrupted, my voice rising. You have no right to decide what's mine. You have no right to erase me. The judge leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. My words seemed to hang in the air, heavy, raw. Claire's lawyer rose again. Your Honor, we contest. The judge raised his hand, cutting him off. Enough. We will hear all evidence before making a ruling. But first, Ms. Evelyn— My name on his lips felt surreal. My knees trembled. Yes, Your Honor. This is not a simple case of property dispute. The allegations of forgery and undue influence are serious. I will need to review these recordings and the testimonies presented today. This court will reconvene at a later date to deliver a verdict. A hush fell over the courtroom. My heart sank and soared all at once. Not a decision yet, but a chance. Michael buried his face in my arm. Grandma, we did it! I kissed the top of his head. No, Michael. We've only just begun. Claire looked at me for the first time since the trial began. Her lips pressed thin, her eyes cold. You don't know what you're doing, she said under her breath. I smiled faintly, despite the fear pounding in me. Oh, I do. I'm fighting for my home, for my dignity, for my life. The gavel came down. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. I felt both exhausted and alive, every emotion crashing through me at once. As we walked out, Mr. Harris caught my arm. Evelyn, we're in this together now. We'll see this through, I nodded. We will. No matter what it takes. Outside the courthouse, the air felt sharp against my skin. The day was ending, but my war was far from over. I looked at Michael, clutching my hand, and whispered, This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. But deep in my chest, I knew. The real test was still ahead. The morning of the verdict was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the hush before a storm. Michael and I sat in the waiting area of the courthouse. His fingers tapped nervously against his knee. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way he kept glancing toward the courtroom doors. I felt the same knot in my stomach, but beneath it, there was something else. A strange mix of fear and hope. The doors opened. The judge appeared. Everyone rose instinctively. The courtroom fell silent. Ms. Evelyn, the judge began, his voice calm but heavy. After reviewing all evidence, testimonies and documents, this court finds that the sale of the property was improperly executed under undue influence. The transaction is hereby overturned. Ownership is restored to Ms. Evelyn. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Michael's hand clutched mine so hard I could feel his nails pressing into my skin. Grandma, he whispered, voice trembling. Tears sprung to my eyes. I blinked hard to stop them, but they fell anyway. Relief, exhaustion, triumph, all mingled in that moment. I stood slowly, my legs weak. Thank you, I said, voice breaking, louder than I intended. Thank you. The courtroom erupted. Murmurs, shuffling papers, whispers. Claire's face was pale, her lips pressed in a thin line. She didn't meet my gaze. Michael leaned against me, his head resting on my shoulder. We did it, he said softly. I hugged him tightly, closing my eyes. Yes, we did. Later, outside the courthouse, Mr. Harris found me. His suit was slightly rumpled, his tie loosened, but his smile was warm. Well done, Evelyn. You fought harder than most would have. I had to, I said quietly. It was more than the house. It was my dignity, he nodded. And you won. I hope you understand what that means. I do, I said, looking at Michael. It means we won our home back, our life. Michael smiled shyly. Grandma, can we go home now? Yes, I said, feeling a wave of exhaustion and relief wash over me. Home. The drive back was quiet. I kept glancing at the familiar streets, the buildings I'd passed countless times. But everything looked different now, brighter somehow, like the air had been cleared. When we reached the house, the front door stood there as it always had. But to me, it was no longer just a door. It was a threshold I'd fought for, a symbol of everything I'd endured. Michael darted inside before I could stop him. "Grandma, look!" he shouted. I followed. The living room smelled of old wood and lavender, my lavender sachets. My eyes swept over the space. It was the same, but everything felt sharper now, more precious. I went to my bedroom. My hands rested on the doorknob for a long moment. It was my sanctuary, the one place that had kept me grounded through the storm. I opened the door slowly. The room was quiet. The sunlight fell through the curtains in a soft golden glow. I stepped inside, breathing in deeply. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe. Michael leaned in the doorway. "Grandma?" I turned to him, smiling softly. "Yes, sweetheart?" "I'm glad we fought for this," he said simply. "So am I whispered. Later, I called Mr. Harris. "Thank you," I said again, my voice full of emotion. "For everything. For believing in me," he chuckled softly. "You did the hard work, Evelyn. I just guided you." "You guided me to my home," I said, the words weighted with gratitude. As I hung up the phone, I sat on my bed, reflecting on everything that had happened. I was changed now, no longer the quiet, trusting woman I once was. I was wiser, tougher, more cautious. The betrayal had been deep, but the victory was sweeter because it had been hard won. My heart ached for what I had lost in the process. Trust, peace of mind, innocence. But there was something new I had gained, strength. I looked around my room, my sanctuary. This was mine. Every corner held memories. Every creak of the floorboards whispered stories of laughter and life. I had fought for this, and I would protect it. Michael came over and sat beside me. "Grandma, will it ever happen again?" I looked at him, smiling softly despite the weariness in my bones. "We'll be ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it, together." He smiled back, and I pulled him into another hug. Later that night, I stood by my window, looking out over the quiet street. My home felt different now, not just a place, but a victory. A testament to endurance, courage, and love. I whispered to myself, almost without thinking, "This is mine, and no one will ever take it away." The days after the trial felt strange, like the air had shifted. People smiled politely when they passed me, some whispered, some nodded. But I could still feel a shadow lingering, a heaviness I couldn't shake. Michael and I had settled back into the quiet rhythm of home. I was unpacking a box of photographs when the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Marissa, my neighbor and old friend. "Hello?" I said, my voice soft. "Evelyn, I don't know how to say this," Marissa said, her voice trembling. "It's your daughter. She's gone, missing." "What?" My voice rose without me meaning it to. I dropped the photo album. Pictures scattered across the carpet. She hasn't been seen since the trial ended. No one knows where she went. My stomach turned. "Vanished?" I whispered. "Yes," Marissa replied. "And Evelyn, there are rumors. People saying she left town, maybe even the country. But no one's sure. The police are investigating. I thought you should know." I leaned against the wall, my breath coming in short bursts. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my mind was clouded with confusion. Part of me felt relieved. Maybe she couldn't hurt me anymore. But another part couldn't shake the suspicion gnawing at my gut. "Why now?" I asked quietly. "Why after everything?" Marissa hesitated. I don't know, but some friends think she took something with her. Something important, something dangerous." I sank into my chair, staring at the scattered photographs. Faces smiling from years ago, moments frozen in time. Betrayal, lies, justice, and now, disappearance. Michael came in holding 2 mugs of tea. "Grandma, what's wrong?" I shook my head. "It's your aunt. She's gone," his brow furrowed. "Gone? Like, left?" "I don't know," I said, my voice trembling. "Nobody knows." We sat in silence, the air heavy with unanswered questions. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. The house felt smaller somehow, as if a shadow had crept inside. Later that evening, I called Marissa back. She told me the police had found her daughter's car abandoned at the edge of town. No sign of her anywhere, no explanation. I hung up the phone and stood by my bedroom window, looking out at the street. The house was quiet. Michael was asleep. But my mind was not. Somewhere inside me, a chill settled. The trial had ended, but the story, my story, was not over. I whispered to myself, almost in a trance, sometimes the truth isn't the end. It's just the beginning. And deep down, I knew this was far from over. Betrayal can hide in places we least expect. Trust can be broken in ways we never see coming. What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the truth isn't the end. It's just the beginning.